Somewhere around this time, Hank, the social science department was dissolved into the history department. Can you say a little bit about when that happened?
91.
Okay.
The whole thrust of higher education, particularly on campus, was changing. And all these little fiefdoms were disappearing. The emphasis on general education, where all the lower division students had to take so many hours of interdisciplinary courses, was dropped in that period. And as a result, the social sciences, as they had existed since the 60s, were no longer required. You could take 2 courses, say, in World Civ, but you could replace these with courses in American history. And much the same thing was being done in political science and sociology and across the board. So it was decided that, because partly due to retirements, many of the older professors were retiring, it would be a good time to consolidate the history and social science departments. And by that time, I suppose 2 out of every 3 people in the old social science department had a degree or a PhD in history. And so the decision was made that we, instead of hiring more history teachers, we could have people who actually had been trained in specialties in history offering those courses, since we were already tenured, and this would alleviate some of the duplication. So in 91, the history and social science department were united under the one history umbrella. And many of us, for the first time, got to teach things that we had been trained to teach 30 years, well, not 30 years, but 25 years earlier. And I particularly enjoyed teaching modern American history. Ironically, with all my degrees in modern American history, I had only taught a couple of survey classes in American history in Louisiana and at Eastern. And it was a thrill to teach upper division students.
We graduate students, probably.
Graduate students sometimes. And I think many of the professors in the social science department were content with that. But the unfortunate aspect was that several of the professors did not have history degrees, and particularly maybe 4 or 5 of the women did not have a degree above the master's. And that was somewhat discriminatory toward them. And so they were kind of eased out of the department or even encouraged to retire early. And I think there was some bitterness because of that. But I have no doubt that the overall union of the 2 departments was good.
But it made things better for you.
Yes, it did.
Specifically. Well, let's talk about the most recent 2 presidents, Robert Custer, Joanne Glasser. We're talking roughly about the last 10 years. What do you remember about those presidencies? Now, you retired
in 04.
Before, that was just after Joanne Glasser came.
That's right.
So Custer,
I remember very well. And as Dr. Rainey had said, he was very personable. He tried to reach out to the faculty. And the first thing he did that startled me was he had weekly faculty coffees. And you could go over to the King Johnson building, to the old faculty lounge, and there he would be. And of course, many of the faculty that went to these coffees had an agenda. They had their own ideas, but he was open and he would talk with everyone. And I think he listened to what they had to say. Dr. Rainey mentioned the radio shows, and I listened to those sometimes, and he had some true personalities on that show. One in particular, I remember Joey Bale Boone, who I knew personally. She was poet laureate, and she said, "Oh, we listen to Dr. Custer anytime we can get him on our radio back home in Western Kentucky." But I think he did a lot of good things publicly for Eastern and for education and political leaders and even student interviews on that show. The thing that I particularly remember him for, well, there were two things I particularly remember him for. One was the scholarship display that he had in the ballroom of the King Johnson building. I think it was either in 2000 or 2001, and it's the only time I recall in all my years at Eastern that everyone who had ever published an article or a book or had a scientific breakthrough in the lab or attended and delivered a talk at a national, international convention had a part of a table to display their scholarship. And I had no idea the amount of scholarship that was here at EKU, because I had lived in a limited world, and basically the historians and the government professors were the only ones that I had, that I had contact with. So I met people from all across campus from fields that I didn't even understand. And the fact that they were recognized regionally or nationally just astounded me. I thought that was one of the best highlights of my career, because so often scholarship is not recognized,
Right.
and particularly at Eastern, the emphasis was always on teaching, as I thought it should be. The other thing was, of course, the development of the Center for the Study of Kentucky History and Politics, which you headed so ably, and I thought those programs that we had every 2 or 3 months, the panels, the speakers, brought some outstanding individuals to campus, and community people as well as university people, and some students attended these. And I regretted it when the direction of that program changed, and now I never hear anything about it. There are no programs that the retired faculty or present faculty can attend. We don't have these speakers coming in like we did. And I think we've lost something in the process. But I think Custer did a lot of good things, even though he was a controversial president.
Yeah.
And
Of course, looking back, you wonder why he was controversial.
well, apparently it was a lot to do with the finances. That
right.
He obviously spent money faster than it could be brought in, and Funderburk managed the money so well, and I think Dr. Rainey pointed out something that I particularly liked about Funderburk. I got a raise every single year that Funderburk was president, a 2 or 3% raise, and Funderburk was president during some austere times.
Right. Yeah.
Someone said he could get blood out of a turnip, and I think he did, literally. Mm-hmm. But I thought Custer had a lot of good qualities. I know that he stepped on a lot of toes as far as administrators are concerned.
Some of which was necessary, probably.
Some may have been necessary.
But of course, I guess the one thing that you and I are thinking about is how he phased out several colleges
That's
and
true.
deans and
tried
stuff.
to cut down on the number of deans.
And
that created
and the common knowledge about that is it wasn't so much that he did it, but the way that he did it, and the way that he did it with less regard for people than he should have had. But no, I enjoyed those years when I was involved with the Center for Kentucky History and Politics, because for some of the reasons you mentioned, that number one, it brought the community and the university a little closer together, I thought, which is always an issue in a college town.